All right, the Strategic Archive must now record the official opening of the new physical reality, as the global financial settlement grid has effectively detached from the paper illusions of the last century. While the public retail interfaces are still displaying maintenance errors and temporary synchronization failures, the raw data from the primary settlement nodes confirms that the transition to a commodity-backed ledger is no longer a future projection. John CC is the archive where we look past the managed silence and track the terminal movement of the world's physical resources. Today's data proves that the yuan-backed digital dollar has hit a wall of absolute physical scarcity that no central bank algorithm can overcome or manipulate. The shadow market for silver has entered a state of terminal decoupling this morning, with physical delivery premiums in the primary Eastern hubs now exceeding 300% of the last recorded paper price. We are receiving verified reports from the logistics sector that the remaining silver inventory at the major Western exchanges has been moved into sovereign escrow, effectively voiding every outstanding paper contract and ETF claim in existence. This is the ultimate force majeure event, a quiet admission that the vaults are empty and the paper tokens are now nothing more than digital memories. The math of the reset is simple. The industrial world requires the metal to function, and the metal is no longer for sale at any price denominated in unbacked currency units. Gold has cleared a reported shadow price of $5,500 in the private international settlement tiers that are now bypassing the Western clearing system entirely. Internal ledger data proves that the world's primary energy producers have officially switched their settlement protocols to the new resource-backed unit, creating an instantaneous vacuum of demand for the legacy G7 currencies. We are witnessing the economic decapitation of the debt-based system in real time as the value of every digital promise is being re-anchored to the weight of physical metal held in the vaults of the resource-holding nations. The John CC archive is documenting this transition, providing the only data-driven map for the sovereign individual in a world where the screens are no longer telling the truth. Inventory data from the primary transport nodes confirms that the military has taken direct control of the transit corridors for strategic metals to ensure the continuity of the defense and telecommunications infrastructure. This move effectively nationalizes the remaining physical collateral and places it beyond the reach of the private investor or the commercial banking system. If you do not have your metal in direct physical possession today, the data suggests you are now a spectator in a global sovereign default. The only wealth that retains functional purchasing power in this new era is the wealth that has no counterparty risk and no digital delete button. ATM systems across the Western Hemisphere remain in a state of total hardware blackout, and the internal tracking of the interbank lending rates shows a spike that reflects infinite risk. This is the definition of a systemic freeze. The digital numbers are visible on the ledgers, but they have lost the ability to be converted into physical goods or services outside of the state-controlled distribution channels. Our archive has consistently shown that the depletion of the physical vaults would eventually lead to this lockdown of the digital grid. This is why the John CC mission focuses on the inventory reports. The movement of silver and gold was the only honest signal in a world of fabricated economic data. The industrial impact of this morning's reset is a total halt in the manufacturing of high-performance AI hardware and advanced semiconductor components, as the physical silver required for production is no longer available on the open market. The high-tech economy is discovering that it was a guest in a physical world that it failed to respect, and today, that world has officially revoked its invitation. You cannot build a digital future on a foundation of empty vaults, and the data proves that the technological era is now entering a period of forced resource contraction. The John CC archive is documenting the paralysis of the industrial base as the paper derivatives that once propped it up are officially zeroed out. Capital flight has now reached the stage of total administrative seizure, as the Emergency Economic Stability Act is being used to prevent any transfer of digital wealth into physical assets. We are seeing reports that all private bullion transactions have been suspended under the guise of market integrity, a move designed to trap the remaining liquidity inside the failing fiat loop. However, the data confirms that the elite and sovereign wealth funds exited the system months ago, leaving the general public to bear the full weight of the currency devaluation. The archives will show that the decoupling of wealth was a managed event, where the exit doors were only open to those who understood the inventory data before the reset began. Options and futures for the entire commodity complex have been administratively terminated at values that represent a fraction of the physical shadow price, effectively wiping out the wealth of the retail participants to save the balance sheets of the bullion banks. This is the final act of the paper era, where the rules are rewritten at the moment of default to ensure the survival of the controllers at the expense of the holders. When the system can no longer lie about the metal, it simply deletes the claim, and that is exactly what the current ledger data is revealing. The math of the reset is a lesson in the danger of trusting a digital screen over a physical weight. Geopolitical sources confirm that the new gold-backed settlement unit has been officially adopted by over 40 nations as of the morning session, creating a parallel financial universe that does not recognize Western debt as valid collateral. This is the final fracture of the global trade system, leaving the yuan-backed dollar as a stranded asset on the international stage. We are seeing the domestic purchasing power of the fiat units collapse in real time, as essential imports are now being priced exclusively in the new resource-backed unit. The John C.C. Archive is recording the death of the fractional reserve illusion and the birth of the new physical standard that will define the next century of trade. The shadow banking sector is currently in a state of terminal unraveling, as the collateral chains for silver and gold derivatives have officially snapped under the pressure of the physical squeeze. Every paper ounce that was used to manipulate the price is now being revealed as a multi-claim fraud, leading to a legal and financial paralysis that no central authority can resolve. This is the mathematical singularity of the reset, where the infinite expansion of digital debt finally hits the immovable wall of finite resource reality. The vaults are empty of paper promises and are now being filled with the hard reality of a new physical standard that will define the wealth of nations for generations to come. We are seeing a total blackout of these specific data points on all mainstream communication platforms, as the National Security Information Decree is being used to prevent a coordinated run on the remaining physical resources. However, the John C.C. data is being archived through decentralized networks to ensure that the strategic record of this collapse remains available to the sovereign individual. The rate of currency devaluation in the shadow markets is now exceeding the ability of the system to update its digital tickers, creating a state of total economic disorientation for the uninformed. If you are waiting for an official confirmation to move your assets, you are ignoring the data that is already screaming from the logistics hubs of the world. The psychological warfare being deployed today is focused on global cooperation and the promise of a new digital social credit that will restore order to the markets. This is the final deception of the old world order, designed to migrate the population from a failed debt system into a programmable surveillance system where every transaction is a monitored and permission-based event. Sovereignty requires the ability to see through this trap and to ensure that your wealth is anchored in the physical world where it cannot be tracked, frozen, or deleted by a central committee. The archives of this reset will be the primary source for understanding how the global population was managed during the transition. The 150-day moving average has moved into a vertical climb that defies all standard technical analysis, representing the total abandonment of the fiat currency units by the world's primary producers. There is no longer a chart in the traditional sense. There is only a record of a currency dying in real time against the only things that cannot be printed or faked by an algorithm. This is the great decoupling, where physical assets have finally broken free from the paper gravity that has held them down for decades. The data shows that the demand for physical bars at the sovereign level is already 100 times higher than the total global supply, creating a vacuum that will consume every other legacy asset. We are entering the final minutes of the old administrative regime, where the world is waiting in silence to see the new form of the global monetary standard. Reports from the private security industry indicate that the primary bullion vaults in the West are now under the direct command of a unified military authority to back the new emergency digital settlement units. The door to secure your own wealth has not just closed. It has been barricaded by the power of the state to preserve its own existence at the expense of the individual. Scarcity is the only law that matters today, and those who did not stay physical are now facing a reality where their digital life savings have no functional role. The synergy between the total energy blackout and the financial freeze is creating a state of nature for the Western financial markets. As the cost of maintaining the digital grid exceeds the actual value of the debt it carries, the system is naturally reverting to the physical standard of the vaults. The John C.C. Archive has consistently shown that you cannot build a digital empire on a foundation of paper lies, and today that foundation has officially collapsed. We are recording the final data points of the paper regime so that the sovereign individuals of the future can understand the mathematical inevitability of the collapse and the absolute necessity of staying sovereign through the possession of physical resources. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and stay tuned to these archives, because the events of the current trading cycle will define the economic destiny of the human race for the next century. The global market has reset, the paper mask has been torn away, and the physical truth is finally taking its throne in the halls of power and the vaults of the sovereign. Thank you for watching, and remember to always trust the raw warehouse data over the scripted promises of a bankrupt administration. The clock has struck midnight for the old world, and today is the date the ledger was finally settled in the weight of real physical metal. The final shadow market update confirms that the IMF has officially suspended its currency basket accounting, effectively ending the era of coordinated Western monetary policy. Every nation is now effectively an island of resources, forced to rely on whatever physical gold and silver it has managed to secure within its own borders. We are seeing the total fragmentation of the global trade system, where only nations with a resource-backed currency are able to participate in the new economy. The data proves that the era of globalism was a debt-fueled hallucination that has finally been corrected by the reality of the vaults. Intellectual honesty requires us to record that the coming days will likely see a controlled communication blackout as the new system is integrated into the retail banking infrastructure. If your digital devices stop functioning, remember that the physical truth of your assets remains unchanged by the status of the network or the silence of the state. The trend of the reset is mathematically locked, and no amount of censorship can bring back the physical metal that has already left the Western exchanges. The time for speculation is officially over. The time for direct physical ownership is all that remains for those who wish to survive the transition to the new resource standard. The 150 exponential moving average has been replaced by a vertical spike that represents the final short squeeze of the global banking architecture. The banks that sold what they did not have are now being systematically liquidated, and their assets are being absorbed by the sovereign entities that respect the laws of physical scarcity. The data proves that the world has moved beyond the point of hedging and into a state of total revaluation, where the possession of physical resources is the only metric that defines purchasing power in the new era. This is not an opening. It is a revelation of the new physical reality of the world. In a world of total digital deception and central bank manipulation, the raw, verifiable movement of physical silver and gold is the only beacon of truth that cannot be extinguished by a central authority. The alerts have turned into the reality of terminal default, and the Strategic Archive has captured every moment of this historic transition. We will continue to provide the data of the new physical standard as the world rebuilds from the ruins of the paper era. Stay physical, stay sovereign, and watch the John C.C. Archive as we navigate the first hours of the new economic world.